Hello guys, this is Kay from Pod Rainbow Science, and in today's episode we're gonna cover the problem of Pride Parade, LGBTQ celebrations, and we're gonna talk about collective self-esteem in LGBTQ people. So let's go! I hope you're all doing great today. I just came back from Utrecht in Netherlands, where I participated in summer school of data analysis. So I've learned many new things, many of which I will probably never use, or maybe I will someday. We'll see. But as usual, I came to a conclusion that learning new things and achieving new abilities are not the most important part of summer schools or academic camps or things like that. The greatest thing you get from participating in such events is just being around people from different places, different countries, different cultures. I met people from Denmark and Netherlands, of course, but I also met a great guy from Greece, great people from Italy, Iraq, Czech Republic, Turkey, and many, many, many other countries. And many great people representing the whole variety of scientific fields, from psychology through physics, engineering, sociology, or literature studies even. We were mostly PhD students, but also lecturers, clinicians, or even development directors, so we could compare very different point of views and see how other people are living. And by saying other people, I mean people living and working outside of academia, because I noticed some time ago that we scientists and we people working within the scientific environment, we are living in a kind of social or informational bubble. And if you've never heard of an informational bubble, or sometimes called filter bubble, this is not my term. The guy named Eli Pariser coined this term, I guess. I guess this is how I should pronounce his name, but I'm not sure. You can look it up later. And information bubble is a state of intellectual isolation, and it is usually a result of the website's algorithms, which selectively guess what kind of information you are most interested in. And based on what you previously clicked, or based on how much time you spend reading articles or watching movies, it automatically positions what you see first. So if you usually read the news about San Francisco and politics, it is very unlikely that features on New York area or climate change will show up on your newsfeed first. But it is very likely that you will read about San Francisco, so the San Francisco news will show up very high on your website. So this is basically how it works. But this filter bubble can apply not only to internet, but also to the wider environment we live in. So if you are a student of a particular discipline, or if you work in a certain company, it is very likely that you are not up to date with what's going on in other companies or other fields of study. So even though I'm very introverted and I'm full of social anxiety and I have a dread of talking to strangers, and if you are a person who is for 15 minutes hesitating whether to ask a question or not until the lecture or speech ceases, and then you regret you did not ask the question, you understand what I'm talking about. But never mind. Participating in summer schools, even when it requires leaving your super safe space and getting out of your very, very comfort zone, it is a great way to develop yourself and just sneak out of your filter bubble and see that indeed there is a world out there, and that the world is sometimes really fascinating, sometimes scary too, but fascinating. When I came back to Poland after that week, I fell into literally a war over the freedom of media. And if you are not familiar with what is going on here right now, I'm going to give you a quick update. A short news from Poland. We have a very, very right-wing government and a very inept opposition. And also, very, very stupid and plain president who does everything the ruling party tells him to do. And, well, the ruling party over recent 5 or even 6 years are gradually destroying the country. This is how it looks. They started with women's rights, so they banned the right to abortion, so now you can terminate pregnancy only when it is life-threatening due to some serious, some serious medical condition. Then they destroyed the judiciary. In the meantime, they messed up with the whole European Union by introducing the so-called LGBT-free zones, which were supposed to be the places, for instance, the counties without LGBTQ people or without something they believe to be the LGBT ideology or something like this. Well, nobody really knows what they mean, and of course there are LGBTQ people everywhere, just like straight people who support their LGBTQ mates. So those LGBT free zones are complete bullshit. But the truth is that on the institutional level, it's a huge pain in the ass because the European Union is pretty pissed off about those zones, and well, basically everybody are pissed off about it. And well, right now, the recent revelation is a warpath with the Western Hemisphere, because they came up with the great idea of a new reform that will prevent the biggest independent media company from broadcasting. So, well, it looked very funny at first, like at first glance, everybody was laughing at how stupid things they do and what else can they come up with. But now it starts to look like Germany after 1930, and it is not funny anymore. It's going really wrong way. But I also have some good news, because within this whole mess and between the protests and demonstrations supporting free media, this Saturday we had a Pride parade here. And I know there are people who think that Pride parades and Pride months and Pride weeks are just unnecessary and they cause the unnatural flutter and so on. But I thought about those people who think opposite, and those people who actually attend these parties. Why is that important for them? Besides, of course, having fun and attending, great parties, what is the psychological role of celebrating Pride nowadays? And, well, since I'm a scholar, the first place I look for the answers is a scientific database. So, this is what I did. I browsed a few bases and I found some interesting pieces on this issue. Well, the role of Pride events, as well as the LGBT tourism and other things related to LGBTQ community, is often understood and described within the collective identity framework. And according to the International Encyclopedia of the Social and Behavioral Sciences, collective identity refers to the cognitive and affective aspects deriving from belonging to certain groups, with which persons identify themselves and which place them with certain social categories. Such as ethnicity, nationality, gender, or sexual identity, or anything like that. So, well, again, the collective identity framework, to some degree, explains why LGBTQ people attend events dedicated for the rainbow community. And I found an interesting paper from Ham and colleagues, and I believe this is from 2017. I guess I will upload it in the description. But in this article, they tried to answer the question whether the sense of belonging somehow affects the satisfaction with LGBT events in the group of sexual minority people. And the sense of belonging was understood as an affective bond with other people and the collective self-esteem with the rainbow community. And I think I have to explain the rainbow community thing. Well, I borrowed this term from people conducting research in New Zealand. We met in London some time ago, and they were not using this LGBT initialism, but instead they were using the rainbow community to underline the inclusion of every sexual and gender minority person, regardless their gender identity, and also the inclusion of those who do not identify with either of those letters. So I thought that, well, indeed, it is more convenient than using the LGBTQ, P, A, I, and so on. So I borrowed it from them, and I'm using the rainbow community interchangeably with LGBTQ initialism. Okay, but let's go to unpacking the research. Well, Ham and the team understood the affective bond as an individual's emotional connection with other event attendees, and collective self-esteem as an individual's self-evaluation of being a member within the LGBT community. The research was conducted utilizing the self-administered survey. Self-administered means that people were given the survey via mail or newsletter, and they were answering the questions without any advice or any control from the researcher. And the affective bond was measured with 6 items, like, for example, I feel connected to this event, while the collective self-esteem was measured with 5 items. For instance, my involvement in the LGBT community is an important reflection of who I am. Those were the items. Well, study participants were assessing the items on a so-called 7-point Likert scale, and it ranged from 1, strongly disagree, to 7, strongly agree. And overall, 261 cases were included in the analysis, and, well, they indeed supported the hypothesis that the sense of belonging to both the events and the community resulted with the greater satisfaction with the event and further positive intentions to recommend the event to others and to also to revisit it. And additionally, they found out that higher collective self-esteem, as well as identifying as a member of the rainbow community, increased the chance of attending the event in the future. Yet another relevant thing to this issue comes from Rubino, Case, and Anderson, who looked at the pride from the perspective of the protective role it plays in depression among lesbians. They also identified collective self-esteem as one of the most important constructs to understand this relationship. However, they used it as the mediator of the effect of internalized homophobia and depression. And if you're not familiar with what mediator is, it is something that can change the effect of one thing on another. So, for example, to put it in the nutshell, a physical activity level can be the mediator of the relationship between calories intake and body weight. So this is how it works. You can the relationship between calories intake and body weight can be linear, but if you take people who are physically active and who are physically inactive, the relationship will be bigger or smaller. So this is how mediator works. Okay, so coming back to Rubino and colleagues, they collected data from 225 females identified as lesbians. They did not, unfortunately, indicate whether they controlled if the participants were cisgender women, so we unfortunately do not have this information. But anyway, participants completed the online survey in which they provided the background demographic information, the self-disclosure index, the internalized homophobia scale, the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, and collective self-esteem scale, and also the depression scale. This is what they filled out. And what they found is that consistently with the previous studies, the level of depression was higher than in general population, so it is nothing that surprised us. However, the level of pride, and the pride included self-disclosure, self-esteem, and collective self-esteem. So the level of pride seemed to alleviate the negative impact of the internalized homophobia on lesbians' well-being. So it means that people who attended LGBTQ events, so those who had higher collective self-esteem, those who were more open about their sexual identity, were not suffering that much of internalized homophobia compared to people who had lower level of pride. So those who were not attending LGBTQ events, or those who were concealing their sexual identity. So their findings gave a direct implication that it is relevant for clinicians to target lesbian self-esteem and collective self-esteem, especially in women who experience psychological distress related to their sexual identity. So there might be some people who do not feel okay, those people who do not feel secure with, speaking out loud about who they are. So it somehow, to some degree, helps them, or it can be important for clinicians to work on this issue with people. All right, so those were two interesting pieces on LGBTQ events, which I found recently. I have to admit, there are not many of them. So if you come across such paper, so please shoot me an email or DM on Twitter. I'll be happy to read more about it. So going back to my question from the beginning, the Pride events, celebrations and parades play, or at least seem to play, important role in the lives of sexual and gender minority people. And besides being the great chance of hanging around with friends and attending concerts and parties, they also increase the level of self-esteem, level of sense of belonging and collective self-esteem among LGBTQ people, which can further alleviate the negative outcomes stemming from their minority status and make them feel better. So, to sum it up, if you know someone who is sexual minority person, or who is somehow struggling with their sexual gender identity, take them to the Pride event, take them to celebrate, with other LGBTQ people, but also take your friends, parents, colleagues, roommates, or the closest ones, or whoever you have around you, and go celebrate the Pride all year around, because it's good for your well-being, it's good for your health, it will help you live better. Alright, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have questions, don't hesitate, just write me an email or private message. If you want to know more about an issue I tackle. Also, if you know about some interesting research that is going on, or if you came across the interesting research paper, let me know. I'll be happy to read it, and maybe I will talk about it in the next episodes. I hope you're doing great. Have fun, enjoy the rest of your day or evening or night, I don't know at what time you're listening, and until next time, share your knowledge and stay healthy.